Yeah, excellent. Thanks, Vanessa. How are you?
Oh my gosh, super excited to see you. I was so grateful that you decided to come on board and be one of the special teachers sharing your wisdom and your knowledge and your heart with all of us during this time.
I
So,
wouldn't miss it.
oh yay, can't wait, can't wait. So, and I am a little bit selfish in this arena because I've put together this series for everybody, really just trying to bring together all of my favorite people to learn from. So,
Oh,
and I think that, whilst we're at home and I know everybody in my audience, they absolutely love learning. They absolutely love expanding their mindset and maybe having that a little bit challenged as well. So I love the diversity of our guests so far, and you are definitely no different. So today's special guest is the one and only Pip McKay. Now, she is one of my favorite teachers. I've done different parts of her beautiful work and coaching work around matrix therapies, which is your special modality that you've developed and contributed to particularly the NLP community. So Pip, for those people who don't know, she is an award-winning, best-selling author, pioneer in the personal development realm, and a sought-after international speaker and writer. And I can't wait to dive into a bunch of amazing questions with you today, Pip. But my first
lovely.
one for you is, what are you most grateful for in your life right now?
Oh, so many things. But I was very lucky because I got married on the 2nd of February and went on honeymoon just before everything broke out. And so we were just so blessed. We had a fairy tale wedding with a horse and carriage and a castle and a handsome prince, of course. And so I was really, really lucky. But on a bigger kind of world stage, I'm so grateful to people like yourself, Vanessa, because I see these incredible female leaders stepping up and really offering this compassion with strength to the world. And I'm so proud of the female leaders in the world, yourself, a lot of the other women in the personal development community, but also too, Jacinta just leading the way in New Zealand about how to deal with this and how to be a strong leader, and Angela Merkel in Germany. I just think, wow, this is the way to deal with it. And these really compassionate women who are so mature in their response is just so beautiful to see.
Oh, I love that. And you really touched my heart, because that's one of my greatest inspirations is actually the kindness that we all share, as women, as leaders, as men, it doesn't matter. But I really, really appreciate and really resonate with you just shouting out some cool names and other people to tune into during this time as well. That's what I want to do with this, because, I have an audience who might not know yet who you are. So a lot of the audience are from America, across the globe. And I'm like, well, if I've got connection, if I've got this potential opportunity to bring her on and get to share her with other people, then all the better for it. So thanks for sharing that. And I really wanted to congratulate you, but you kind of beat me to it. About your beautiful wedding.
So exciting,
Oh,
and it was so lovely because Will and I are all together. I call it, we're in our hutch together, hanging out. But also being able to reach out to the world in this way, in a new way.
Absolutely. And I was just going to say, good to have the lockdown happening during the honeymoon period.
Yeah, well, we were lucky we came back from Bora Bora just beforehand, so it's almost like this extended honeymoon. Lucky we love each other so much.
I love that. That's amazing. And so what I wanted to do before I dive into the key questions that I've been really diving into with everybody so far is, I know you have such a wealth of wisdom. You have such a unique experience of the world. And what I'd love for you to share with us all is a bit of kind of through the lens of the work that you do, through the lens of your experiences, how are you viewing the pandemic? And how could we be looking at it in a more empowered light based on that?
Yeah, well, I think in many ways I do see it archetypally, because of course archetypes is one of my specialities. And I really do sort of see it in this way of Mother Earth, just sort of saying to us, hey, you really need to wake up. I said on one of my programs, you know, Mother Earth's like, go to your room and think about your behavior, because we really need to be, you know, changing a lot of our behavior. And even people who have that consciousness, you know, getting really busy and caught up without, you know, connecting to nature, connecting to ourselves, which is one of the reasons I just love the topic that you've got here, is just so important. And we really need to take that time out and look at that. But we also need to make sure that we're not denying, you know, what is happening in the world, and what a, you know, how tragic that is for so many people, and, you know, the fears and the emotions that this does bring up for everybody. I mean, you know, the Spanish flu, that was that worldwide epidemic where 50 million people died, that, you know, that happened within, you know, still just living memory. But our grandparents went through that. And the government after the First World War shut down all kind of communication and discussion about that. So there are a lot of lessons we could have learned from that. You know, if we had like a Anzac Day that was a Spanish flu day, which killed so many more people than the First World War, Second World War, Korea and Vietnam put together, you know, there might be a lot of lessons that we already have. But that sort of shutdown, denial, that has sort of come out of a lot of that machismo concept, that we don't need to worry about these things at all. I think, you know, there's two extremes here. One is getting into such a panic that, you know, in Italy, everybody hops on a train when people have got it, and then it spreads all around Italy. So that's a type of fear panic we don't want to have. But we also want to be able to take the messages from fear of things that have happened in the past and go, do you know what? Maybe there's some good lessons for us to learn here, so that we don't have this situation in the future. And maybe, you know, we need to really be kind to wild animals and not encroach on their environment, and contain ourselves more, whether it's in the Amazon or in China or anywhere else, to just, you know, be taking care. I feel like Mother Earth is saying, you know, there's a lot of other children here on Earth, and you know, you need to be aware and not start bullying all her other children that are trying to live in peace here, you know, in this world, and not have that sort of, you know, shadow egoic masculinity, not the beautiful, enlightened, beautiful masculinity, but that real shadow masculinity that both men and women can get involved in, where we just think that we can do anything we want without any consequences. So yeah, that's kind of my take on it.
Wow, I'm so glad I asked you that question, because that was such a good analogy that you shared with us all. You know, Mother Earth sending us to our rooms with being the naughty kid who thinks they can do anything and can bully everybody and get whatever they want. I really resonate with that. And it's such a unique perspective, because what I love about the work that you do is, yes, all the archetypal you know, ability to use archetypes in a way to describe and simplify what's going on, and also take the personal element out and kind of look at it more objectively. It's really cool to learn that way of looking at the world. And also your expansive knowledge in history is really powerful, because there's things that you just said I had no idea about, and it put everything into perspective, you know. And so thank you for sharing that. And you mentioned this key around, actually, before we get into that, into the connection piece, could you share a little bit about, because it's been a bit of a common theme with masculinity, femininity. I know it's a really great part of your expertise. Could you just share with us what, if people they don't really understand what that is, and you briefly explained what, you know, like the shadow masculine, the shadow feminine, what's Mother Earth trying to get us to get to instead of that masculine?
I think, you know, I think there's a lot of confusion about masculinity and femininity, particularly because gender roles have changed so much over the last 20, 30, 50 years. And so, you know, there's a difference between a stereotype, which is just a repeated pattern, often in the negative. And we might see the stereotype of the 1950s housewife, or the stereotype of, you know, the patriarchal man who is the boss of his family. So that's a stereotype. And in my work, we call that a shadow. So, you know, of course, there's men and there's women, there's mothers and fathers. These are common roles that are there. And that role could be in an archetypal form, which is the best example of that role, or it could be in a shadow form. But also, too, both men and women have the masculine and the feminine within, because it takes a man and a woman, you know, a sperm and an ovum to make us. Even if there's gay couples, it still takes a sperm and an ovum to make us. So we all have the masculine and feminine. And if we simplify that and take away all the stereotypes and all the sort of confines and boxing people, if we take all that away, really the feminine is a receptive aspect, and the masculine is a projective aspect. And that just comes from simply what happens in making love. You know, the woman is receiving that into her body, and the man is projecting something out of his body. So at its absolute most basic, masculinity is projecting and femininity is receiving. And so what that means is in every aspect of our life, it can be broken up into masculine and feminine. So even if you're breathing in, you're receiving. So that's a feminine thing. When you breathe out, you're projecting something into the world. So that is a masculine thing. So I think at its absolute most basic, this is what it is. And then when we look at an archetype, you know, of Mother Earth, then we're looking at that at the best of the mother, which is, you know, generous and giving and loving, but also strong and protective and powerful manifester, and the capacity to be and create abundance. Because, you know, you'll see Mother Earth, she doesn't like go, well, that's one flower, that's the end of what a tree needs to give today. It's just, you know, she is as generous as she can be with the resources she has. But a flower, you know, a tree also won't produce a heap of flowers if there's no resources for it to draw on. So I think that's you know, it's a beautiful way of looking at it. And then with the masculine, you know, we look at structure, organization, and instead of a structure being something that boxes someone and stops someone expressing what they really need, which is the shadow, the best of the masculine is something that has such keen insight into your uniqueness, your creativity, that it can create structures to support and protect you inside your unique expression. So this, you know, from my work, we just look at only 8 archetypes, and everything else sits underneath just 8, which makes it a lot easier to understand and to analyze.
I love that. And I think that will just give people a little bit of a taste and a flavor towards what you're saying and how that's important. And yeah, so just to give, because I think a lot of people hear the word archetype and they don't quite know what that means. So
Yeah.
would you give a brief example of like, what is the definition of an archetype?
Yeah, well, there's been a lot of confusion about this, and we see people using archetypes in a way that the word wasn't originally intended for, which is quite common with lots of pieces of language. But basically, arc from archetype means best or overall, and type means example of or symbol. So an archetype really, in the meaning of the word from the Greek origin, is the best example of something. So we can see that with an archetype like child, that the qualities that would go with that, what child would symbolize, not just the child as a young human being, but it would symbolize, you know, wonder and energy and enthusiasm and ideas. So this would be the light of an archetype. But we can also see that a wounded child isn't an archetype. That is the shadow of the type child. So an archetype would be a child who is happy, curious, exploring their world, enjoying themselves, laughing, having heaps of energy, inspired. But a wounded child would be a shadow of that. So I think this is a really important definition, because even Jung didn't really have the original definition of the word. And so a lot of people have repeated shadows and subtypes as an archetype, when an archetype is an umbrella of common types that are universal, that we see all over the world in its best expression.
I love that. And I thank you for sharing that, because I know I learnt that from you. And it did wake me up because, yeah, that word is kind of thrown around. And if you learn from, so there's some incredible people doing some incredible work in the realm, but they're not sharing the same definition. And it just makes things very clear. So thank you for sharing that. Okay, so let's get into some of these questions, because you did mention that, you know, the importance of connecting to the self during this time. And, you know, Mother Earth sending us to the bedroom, hey, you know, stop doing what you're doing and connect with yourself a hell of a lot better, so you can come out here and connect with the world on a better level. So my question for you is, what is your best strategy for connecting with the self and creating internal stability during an uncertain time?
Yes, well, I really feel that one of the things that creates a disconnection is the way people relate to their emotions. So I think that there's a lot of fear of fear, and I don't think that that's necessary. I think that creates denial, dismissing, and also compensatory behaviors like escaping into Netflix or escaping into busyness or workaholic behavior or something else. Whereas I think if we see emotions as messages and we listen to what the message is, then there's a calming of the emotion, because the emotion is just attempting to tell us something. And sometimes the emotion is attempting to tell us something from childhood. So if we listen to the emotion as if we would listen to a child, so, you know, say it's fear, we listen to the fear, we accept that the child feels afraid. Oh, right, you feel afraid. We welcome the child, you know, and hug the child. And then we gain wisdom from what is hidden inside that emotion. Then I think that is really, really powerful. And that's what I do for myself. And so, Vanessa, because I knew that I was coming to do this, I thought, do you know, I'm going to simplify the process that I do down to something especially for Vanessa and her listeners. So I've called this process LAWW, LAWW, and it just starts with listen, accept, welcome, and then wisdom. So I wanted to go through this with a personal example that I had when this pandemic first came out. And what I think a lot of people, you know, the two probably big things that most people are going to be concerned about. And just to let people know, you know, everybody has this response. It's how we respond to it that makes the difference between whether it becomes something super empowering or whether it becomes something that causes procrastination or panic or some of the other more disempowering behaviors. So is that all cool with you?
Oh, absolutely. I'm loving it already.
I dropped my
Please
phone.
share away.
Okay. My phone's being held up by a Pegasus statue that it didn't quite work, but anyway. Yeah. So,
love it.
So when the pandemic, you know, we just come back from our honeymoon and we were just about to run a live program, and you know, and it just started, and then the government said, no, you can't meet. And then it was just like, oh gosh, we can't meet, and we're a live event company, you know. So the first feeling I had was, you know, of course, for my loved ones, you know, because my mum has kidney disease. She's not very well. My sister's not well. She's in hospital. And, you know, my first fear was for them. And then I was also concerned about, how am I going to run my business? How will this affect the business? Will I be able to do what I'm doing? You know, how will that affect cash flow in the business? All of these things. So the first one is to listen. So first of all, it's like, okay, what am I feeling? Oh, I'm afraid. Yeah. Okay, what am I afraid of? Oh, well, I'm afraid that my loved ones will be affected. And I'm afraid that this will affect my business and what I love to do with my life. And also, you know, it might affect cash flow in the business. So that's the first thing, just listening. Yeah. And then just taking a moment to accept and just go, do you know what? It's okay to be afraid, just like you would with a child. It's totally okay. It's normal. And in fact, you know, we don't want to deny that or dismiss that or pretend that there's nothing to be afraid of, you know. It's actually okay to be afraid. And just take a deep breath on that and just accept it's okay to be afraid. And then it's like welcoming the fear in. And it's like, okay, I welcome this fear, just like I'd welcome a child into a hug who's afraid. And then the first thing is, you know, when I welcome this fear in, well, you know, I love these people. I don't want them to be hurt. You know, this is showing my care and my love of my family. This is actually a really beautiful thing. And the fear is just saying, hey, are they safe? Is there anything you can do to make them safe? What, you know, what might happen? And then it's like, does this remind me of anything in my past? And well, it does, because my father died when I was 9. And, you know, I'm afraid of the people I love dying. You know, that's there. And then it's like, well, can I do anything about this now? So sure, you know, I might give my mum some vitamins, my sister, and there's not a lot I can do there. So I just have to accept that and accept the fact that, you know, it's possible that they might pass away, you know, and that is a possibility, even at some point anyway, in the near, not too distant future, that might be a reality. So I just have to go, okay, all right, well, in that case, what can I do? I can absolutely take advantage of the time I have to connect with the people I love, tell them that I love them. And, you know, my sister lives in England. It's not always been so easy to connect with her. So, you know, I've changed, and she doesn't have social media or any of the other things I'd normally connect with people on. She doesn't even know how to FaceTime. So, you know, I've just got to change, you know, my provider on my phone and make sure that I can just call her whenever I want to and just spend that time with her and don't miss out on that time. So in that case, that is actually quite reasonable. It's giving me a beautiful message, you know, connect with the people you love. Don't take for granted the time that you have with the people that you love, you know. That's a beautiful message. But I don't want to go, I'm so afraid about it, I don't want to look at it, and then not spend any time with them because I'm afraid of pain. You know, that wouldn't be good.
Yeah.
So this is a beautiful piece of wisdom out of that. And then in terms of my business, it was like, okay, so I welcome that fear in. All right, I actually can't run my business live. You know, that's a reality. So, yeah, and how does that affect my business? There may be effects I don't even know about. What are some of the ones I can predict? Okay, I can't run a live seminar. I can't market in the way I normally would. All right, that's fine. That's true. What can I do instead? You know, I can connect online. I can run and deliver our programs online. I can connect with beautiful people such as yourself and reach out to more people about my work. You know, these are all things that I can do. I can look at my finances, look at what I can organize in there, you know, where we organize our finances a long time ago. So there's lots of things that are great there in terms of resources, in terms of the business, just having to look at what else can we do in the business. How can we make sure that the finances are maturely safe and comfortable, and what can we do if we have an issue in the future, if it goes on for a longer time than we're expecting. So that's just a part of just normal, mature, looking to the future, seeing what we can do, making sure we've got things available. You know, if we needed to, then we can do things to make sure we keep all our staff and that we can deliver to all our beautiful people who are there with us. So I think this is just a really reasonable, normal kind of way of being mature. And then when we're in our adult self, these are all the mature things that we would come across. But when we've got fear being triggered into childhood, sometimes our child can feel a little bit uncomfortable. And what this reminded my child of was when I was from 4 to 6 years old, Dad couldn't get work. Mum was the only provider. We were living in a 1-bedroom flat in St Kilda. And, you know, a part of me just never wanted to face that sort of poverty, you know, ever again, or be subjected. And, you know, that created a vulnerability in our family where, you know, where somebody wasn't towards sort of infiltrated our family and created abuse for me when I was a child. And so, you know, there's a little part of my child bit that is associating, you know, if we run out of money, maybe I'll have to do things I don't want to do. Maybe that'll create a situation in my life where I'm taken advantage of, you know. And it's like, okay, there's wisdom in that as well. Do you know, I don't have to do anything I don't want to do now. You know, it's okay. We're in a different circumstance. Little darling child, you come and live with me now. I'm not going to be so busy worrying about money. I'm not going to look at you and look after you. I'm going to look after you. Whereas, you know, my parents were too busy at that time to see what was going on. Well, I'm not going to be too busy to see you, listen to your fears, welcome you, connect with you, and understand that we're in different circumstances now, but I will make sure that we don't do anything we don't want to do in these circumstances to make money, you know? So yeah, so that's how I connect with myself.
Wow, that was just so powerful, and I really just appreciate you putting in your own personal experience and opening up and being the example and the role model in this situation, and being vulnerable about it, because that's actually what I feel connects people and inspires people to actually take action. So I love that, Law. I'm definitely applying that to everything that I do. So we've got listen, accept, welcome it in, and then find that wisdom. And what I'm really hearing from you is it's all leading, it's actually pointing to, like you said, a beautiful thing. It's waking you up to what's most important to you, to your values.
Exactly. And then it's kind of like sometimes just that awareness is enough, and it's a shift because you've already done plenty of work on it. That's what I found for myself. Like, it just shifted so quickly when I just sat and just listened to it. You know, maybe, you know, half an hour later it was done and it was dusted, and I was off doing what we were doing next. But I think sometimes when people don't listen, suddenly all these weird compensatory mechanisms or denials or you know, people start eating a whole lot of food they wouldn't normally eat, or, you know, just these sort of weird compensations because they're trying to pacify the child. But if we just, you know, if we just like accept the child, then we don't have to go through that. And it's so fast and we're over it. Sometimes when I've gone in and done something like that, it's like, hey, actually, that's something I haven't looked at before. You know, those two examples are things I've looked at, so that was easy to overcome. But what wasn't, you know, when I originally started looking at it, but nowadays it's very easy. It's just an awareness. But sometimes it's just an invitation, hey, I need to go and do some more work on some area of my life that I haven't looked at, or, oh, I didn't realize that before, or how that connected before. And then it's just like, you know, find someone you can work with and do some emotional clearing, or go and do a personal development course or something and look at that particular issue. Yeah,
absolutely. And I love that, you know, that's the other benefit I'm seeing in this situation is people such as yourself being kind of put in, you know, you're usually running live events regularly, and now, you know, you're going to get a larger audience from across the globe, you know.
Exactly.
So awesome. So
it is. It's so exciting. We're really loving that. And, you know, people who are like, oh, you know, it's going to be not easy even just from Perth. They are like, hey, oh, I'm so happy it's online. I didn't really want to do that 6-hour flight, you know. Yeah. 4-hour flight or whatever it is. Yeah, with the time difference. Absolutely. So it's been really great.
Absolutely. I love that. And just wanted to check in. Tim said just wow to your process around law. And we've got Jerry saying hi to us as well. So I know a lot of people are going to get a ton of value just from that first connection question that I have to share, had to ask you. But I have a couple more questions I want to squeeze in. So the next one I want to ask you is all around this concept of having clarity. So we have something that we're focused on that's inspiring us, that's pulling us through, rather than focusing on all the scarcity and the chaos and the fear and all of that sort of stuff. So my question to you is, what powerful question should we all be asking and answering for ourselves right now so that we can come out the other side of this better and more inspired?
Yes, so I've got the question for you. So my question is, how can you do what you love in a way that is balanced and abundant? No, because I think people sort of often are doing 3 things in that question. They're either not doing what they love because they need to make money. So it's like, well, okay, if I'm not doing what I love, how can I make it something that I enjoy more and am passionate about, whilst I look for something that is a much better expression of what I love? So, you know, for people in that situation, then that balanced, so I know a lot of people who do what they love, but they don't do it in a balanced way. And, you know, they're on the computer technology really late at night. It affects their sleep. And then suddenly, you know, the very thing that they love and they're passionate about isn't nurturing their body. And I think, you know, it's really important that we look after this body that Mother Nature made for us, this miracle. I call the body, you know, a unicorn and a lion together, like on a coat of arms. And and we, you know, we really need to love it whilst we're doing our passionate things. I know a lot of people are like, I'm just so passionate about it, you know, but really they're being a workaholic. So their passion has moved into a shadow, and we need to have the light expression of our passion. And then the final thing, abundant, because a lot of people are doing what they love and they're passionate about it, and they might even do it in a balanced way, but it's not abundant for them. So for some way, they need to make friends with money and wealth and abundance, and make sure they're clearing away any shadow beliefs about that, so that they can release themselves from those attitudes and chains from the past that, you know, they might have picked up from their parents or grandparents or whatever. Need to really release that so that they can really step into loving abundance and money and wealth, because it enables them to reach more people and do what they love and look after themselves better and the people around them that they love and connect to. So yeah, how can you do what you love in a way that is balanced and abundant? So that's the question.
And I think that's such a powerful question on so many levels, but also around this concept of sustainability. I think a lot of us are getting awoken to that right now. You know, it's like, well, is what you've been doing actually sustainable? You know, so absolutely. Thank you for that one. I really appreciate sharing.
My pleasure.
I'll be taking some time to answer that after this call.
Beautiful.
And I wanted to ask you also, what is, you know, because I think a lot of people right now, there's kind of, and you mentioned it earlier, you know, we might just fall into the bandwagon of just, oh, I'm just going to take this time at home. I'm just going to watch everything on Netflix. I'm just going to distract myself, you know, and we can lose that opportunity to challenge ourselves in a really inspired, conscious, empowered way, rather than succumbing to thinking the whole world is against us and there's too much challenge, so I just have to go and find support, but actually to bring it back and put ourselves in the driver's seat there, to challenge ourselves in the right direction. So my question for you is, what inspiring challenge do you suggest that we do today to ensure that we're continuing to grow and expand?
Yes, so my challenge is just not to do any distracting behavior. So it's lucky we've had our interview now, because what I'm going to say to people is my challenge is to not watch the television, not look at the phone, not look at any technology at all, and just sit with what it's like when you have nothing, and no book, nothing to entertain yourself, nothing to distract yourself, nothing to escape into, and just what is that like then for you? I actually did this challenge myself for 6 weeks in New Caledonia. I had, you know, from personal experience, I had done the passion thing where I'd just been so passionate about it, but I'd done it in an unbalanced way, and I really had burnt out my adrenals. And so I just took some time out in New Caledonia, and I spent 6 weeks there with literally nothing. And I couldn't even talk. I mean, I was able to talk to Will on the phone, of course, but that was it. Because, and it, you know, everyone speaks French there and I don't speak French, so I couldn't even distract myself by talking to people, you know. And it was really incredible, because at first there was this sort of, you know, nervous, almost anxiety feeling of, oh my gosh, you know, what do I do? Where do I go? And then there was sort of my unconscious mind taking time to let me know a lot of things it wasn't very happy with me about, you know. And then after that, there came this incredible stillness, and out of that came, you know, I created a whole brand new model, which, you know, since that time, it's about 7 years ago, maybe now, I've shared with thousands of people, and people think it's one of my most powerful models of change. It's called the Diamond in the Soul, and it just came out of that place of stillness again, where I'm actually sitting and looking at all the emotions that might come up when there is literally no distraction. And the cool thing is, you've now got the law process to do, so that when you've got no distraction, you can sit there and go, okay, I'm listening to that. going to breathe, accept it, breathe it in, you know, I'm going to welcome it and find the wisdom inside it, because there's tremendous wisdom inside ourselves. And sometimes we're seeking for that outside, but sometimes the thing we're most afraid of, that we're seeking outside something to help us heal, that the wisdom's within.
I love that. And it's funny that you say that, because I have a process myself when I'm working with clients with personality psychology. And when I'm trying to determine if they're an introvert or an extrovert, one of my questions is, what sounds like more of a nightmare scenario? And you just painted the one that the extroverts would all choose as an absolute nightmare, to kind of cut away from all technology, can't even have a book, no external distractions, and actually just go within, you know, just have yourself, and all those voices come up. But
even introverts will have an issue with this, because what I watch with introverts is they do it by reading. I mean, myself, I think probably naturally at one point in my life I was an extrovert, but because my job requires me to do so much extrovert behavior, the last thing I want to do when I'm resting is connect to other people. But my thing is to go into a book, and to not have a book, you know, not have a book at all. That's the interesting place. So I think even introverts have their ways of avoiding emotion, I think.
Absolutely. You know, and I know a lot of people who'd be watching this kind of conversation, they like learning, right? And so and there's that can be that kind of fine edge between, you know, even though you think that you can be doing something really good and empowering because you're learning, but is it actually distracting you from tapping into that process, the law process, and understanding, hey, hang on a minute, like what's actually going on under the surface? And I feel even with meditation can end up being a distraction. You know, people can be chanting or scanning their body, but in actual fact, the unconscious mind is trying to say something. And in meditation, we're often taught not to let those thoughts come up, but to go back to scanning the body. And there's tremendous benefit in that. I'm not saying there isn't, but sometimes we're actually using meditations to stop ourselves feeling. And that seems like such a contradiction, but it's not, you know. So I think everything's context dependent. You know, there's times to go out there and really be in the world, and then there's times to come in. It's just when we're using something, and we can use just about anything to compensate or dismiss or deny our feelings. Oh, I love that you brought that up, and I just wanted to share a really quick personal story. It actually was just after one of your events that you held in Sydney, the Matrix Therapy one, where we just took that photo. If anybody saw that photo that I put out for our interview, and just after that, I actually took off overseas for 3 months, and the idea was to go and spend that time with myself. Although I had some other people who thought that was a really cool idea and come and join me on that trip, like my family, my partner at the time. And anyway, I did, the main part of that was to go to a 10-day silent meditation retreat in my favorite part of the world, in France, in the countryside. And it was just, you know, everything I could have wanted. But the style of meditation I had no idea about before that event, which was like it's called Hridaya, and it's a heart-centered meditation where instead of focusing on bringing your attention back to your body or your breath and canceling everything else out, it actually focused on the question, who am I? And imagine what happens, you know, over 10 days of silence, no connection with anybody, can't even look at anybody, but just contemplating who you are and what can come up from that. It's, you know, but that being said, you know, then you go back into the real world, and it's the question of, can you still apply it? Or was that just so separate that, you know, you didn't get to, it was just an escapism from reality of life unless you apply it. So
yes, and I think this comes back to some of the things I've, you know, been watching on, you know, your videos too, that thing of, you know, taking action, particularly if there's people in your life who you're people pleasing with and who, you know, quietly there's a fear that if you don't people please them, they will become aggressive or critical or something else. And then suddenly you do create a boundary and you find that that is the truth, and they are. And then sometimes what people feel then is like, oh, well, you know, does that mean I shouldn't create a boundary? But in actual fact, it just means I should have listened to my intuition earlier. And it was telling me. And, you know, that thing that you were talking about, the feather and the bus, we do that in horse whispering as well, because we do that in some of our programs. And with a horse, you know, horses affect each other first with energy, and then they'll just do a hair touch, you know, and then they'll do the muscle, and then they do what's called bone. And it's sort of like when our unconscious mind is just touching us with energy and saying, hey, this isn't, you know, watch out, there's something here. And for so many of us, you know, we've been taught not to dismiss fear. You know, that I think that's a misinterpretation of a lot of personal development. So they're just like going, oh, you know, there's nothing to be afraid of except fear. Well, hang on a minute. There's actually certain people that you definitely want to listen to a fear. And, you know, and actually be attuned to feeling that in just the energy first, before there's the conversation, before there's any actual physical touch, before there's, you know, intimacy. So, yeah, I think that's very powerful. You know, your authentic vulnerability there in that video where you were talking about, you know, quite a recent experience at that time. It's just absolutely beautiful and so important, especially in domestic violence situations people find themselves in, you know. They're kind of like, oh, if I just obeyed him, then I wouldn't have been hurt. No. If you had just followed yourself earlier, you would have got out before that happened.
Oh, and I appreciate you checking that out and also sharing that, because I'm in that experience now. And anybody who doesn't know what we're talking about, if you jump on my Facebook page, you can watch the last Facebook Live I did yesterday, and exactly what you're talking about. I really, that's been the common theme throughout my life, is not listening to my intuition from the beginning. And we've all had those experiences where we're like, oh, you know, I knew at the beginning, you know, but we kept on going and people pleasing and being, for myself personally, too externally focused, too over responsible for other people's emotions, and simultaneously being under responsible for myself and my future and what's right. And it does backfire. It does become
and that's where a fear is in the shadow, you know. That's where a fear that goes, oh, if I don't people please, I'll be hurt. You know, so it's kind of like, then that analysis of what is the fear actually. And sometimes, you know, it is a fear when we were a child and the only resource we really did have was people pleasing, because we couldn't leave that environment, you know. Can be still with us as adults. And then it's like, okay, little darling, it's all right. We're not there now, and we can create a boundary. We don't have to people please in a way that's going to be detrimental to self. And at the same time, doesn't mean that we have to be horrible to people either. I think sometimes people go the opposite direction too. You know, there's loving ways we can be powerful. And this comes back to what I think is so beautiful about the female leadership I'm seeing out in the world, you know, with Jacinta Ardern and Angela Merkel in Germany. You know, that you can be compassionate and still strong. You can be loving and still look after the economy. You know, you can, these things don't have to be exclusive. That if we are creative and innovative enough, we can find ways where we can be powerful and loving.
Oh, I'm really loving that you brought this up, Pip, because it really deeply resonates with just on, you know, what we've been talking about. And if I use myself as a vulnerable example here as well, one of the reasons that I recognized that this person wasn't somebody that I wanted to have in my life was actually that they were very threatened by the fact that I am, you know, not on a large scale, but I'm a female leader on a small scale, you know, and that was threatening to them from a masculine, feminine, very shadow masculine kind of way that I knew would cost me my freedom to have somebody like that in my life. So are you seeing that? And I know that's some of your expertise.
Well, I found that it was a belief that I had inside myself, you know, because my mum's a single woman, So I hadn't had that example of a loving, beautiful marriage. And I found in my own life, I had this belief that, you know, you couldn't be a powerful woman who's a leader and still be loved, you know. I think it's a belief a lot of women have, because they either saw the disempowered loved person or the empowered single person. They didn't sort of see both. And so in my life, I had to really heal that. And now I've got this wonderful, supportive man in my life, Will, who's just fabulous. And, you know, there's this dance of masculinity and femininity. You know, there's times where he will step into the masculine and really go out into bat for me. And then there's other times when he will go into his feminine and be really supportive of me. And we both dance this. It's not about a woman always has to be feminine, man always has to be masculine. It's about a dance depending on the context. And, you know, I've been thinking about this really recently over Easter. And, you know, when we look at a significant archetype, you know, Mother Mary, and do you know what? Mother Mary was a leader in her own right. You know, she was the star of the sea. You know, she was the vessel that gave birth. And Joseph was a strong masculine man who supported her. He supported her in her pregnancy. He supported her when he gave birth. And Jesus as well, like, you know, in the I'm just talking about this archetypally here, not in a religious sense, but you know, in the wedding scene, Mary goes to Jesus and says, like, they've run out of wine, do something about it. And Jesus actually listens to her. And at first he dismisses her. He goes like, you know, what's it to do with me? But then later on he goes and turns the water into wine. And, I think this is a really fantastic thing and a different interpretation of Mother Mary than perhaps, you know, we see. But if we actually look at, you know, what was happening there, she was an incredible woman and she was supported by a non-threatened man. I mean, imagine what it's like for a man if you give birth to God. And I think this also is part of the virgin birth. You know, the virgin birth is where we're inspired by something and we give birth to it without the masculine, you know, the making love with the masculine. So there's times when we're going to give birth to something which is just inspired. Like, I feel like my business is a virgin birth. You know, I gave birth to it. It was an inspired thing. I gave birth to it. You know, there's things Will and I give birth to together. You know, so there's inspiration that can happen in both ways. There's inspiration where a man will do the virgin birth. You know, the idea will come into his subconscious mind. You know, maybe Botticelli in The Birth of Venus. You know, into his mind dropped a piece of the divine, and he gave birth to that. And then his masculine self then protected that and put it out into the world. And it was actually saved from the bonfire of the vanities. You know, it wasn't burnt, that picture. It was hidden. So I think there's ways of looking at all these things symbolically that can reinterpret our reality, because, you know, there were married saints. You don't have to be a single saint. I mean, there are plenty of single saints, of course, but, you know, you don't have to be a single saint who gets sacrificed. You know, you can have a loving relationship and give birth to the divine in our world, you know, both through making love, but also just individually as well. And this can be a powerful part of the regenerative story. Yeah.
And so, just based on this, I know we don't have too much time, and I know we've had a couple of comments and questions that I'm going to dive into, and also a little bit of other stuff. But basically, do you feel that we are going to be able to move in that direction in our relationships? You know, you're a great example with Will, you know, being able to have that dance of masculine and feminine. But is it basically, you know, we've got to be able to do that, like an integration of the masculine and feminine within us, so that we can then share that with another person who's doing the same, so that we're not getting caught up in the, you know, you're the woman, so you be the feminine, and you're the masculine, you have to always be this way, which creates so much pain and tension in our relationship dynamics.
Oh, absolutely. I think this is so important. In fact, the ancients called it the holy union within. The conscious mind and the unconscious mind. The conscious mind's always been represented as the masculine. The unconscious mind's always been represented as the feminine. And when the masculine and the feminine can have a loving relationship together, you know, then we give birth to the regenerated personality. And, you know, that's what we do need to do in our own life. And a lot of that journey is clearing the relationship we had with our mum and our dad, the relationship our mum and dad had with each other that we witnessed and often modeled unconsciously as a young child. So, and then being able to really understand what is the best of the masculine and the best of the feminine. How can I integrate both of those into myself in an empowered, holistic way? And then, like you said, share that with others without having this concept that just, you know, that I'm never going to be supported. I just have to do it all myself. That is also, you know, a shadow. We call that the shadow night. You know, we want to be, yes, we're healed and whole, but we can have further dynamic healing because of our relationships. We can be supported when we're feeling vulnerable. You know, one of my favorite places on earth is to sit on Will's lap, you know, this is a beautiful thing. And he's a big man, so it's really easy, you know, for me to sit on his lap and to have that joyful, playful experience too. I call him the big white rabbit. I'm the little kitten. You know, we can have this joyful fun where we're also playing with, you know, the fact that, you know, there is a difference in our size. I can sit on his lap, you know. This is a beautiful thing. We don't want to get rid of that whilst we empower ourselves. We want to keep the best of this, you know, playful aspect of the masculine and feminine and the child within as well, whilst we also grace ourselves with, you know, magnificent, inspiring power that allows us to go out into the world and you know, change things and transform things and have magic, you know.
I love that. So beautiful. So just a couple of things before I dive into just a last question, really just sharing with everybody where they can reach you and find out more about the beautiful work that you're doing, and also just if you had any sort of final thoughts that you'd like to leave everybody with. I just wanted to quickly scroll through and catch some of the comments that we had.
Well, whilst you're doing that, I'll answer those questions because I know we're running out of time and I would love to talk about lots of things. So people can go to my website, Pip McKay, pipmckay.com.au. And on that website, there is a free book offer. So that's my Amazon #1 best-selling book, The 8 Principles of Achievement, Love and Happiness. And in there, I talk about archetypes a lot. So I think this would be really relevant to people on there. And, you know, when they do that, they get our tips and other things that there's a benefit there. So that would be a really great place to go there. So have you got a question from our audience before I have my final words?
Yeah, so Awesome Boat Club is just saying well done for recognizing that. So thank you, Awesome Boat Club. And Tim says, when we can celebrate strengths and not have to distinguish feminine and masculine archetypes, will we be there? Will we have made it?
Oh, well, no, I think we want to be able to distinguish masculine and feminine archetypes because there's a tremendous beauty in that. It's like, if I have more words for different kinds of birds, then I'm much more likely to see the beauty and the variety of all these different kinds of birds. So I totally understand what the intention of that question, which is, you know, that we don't want to have prejudice, and that's so important. And when we look at the archetype, we're looking at the very best expression of something. And when we understand and have models of the very best expression, we can have a more very beautiful and complex understanding of different aspects of our own nature as well as other people's. And I think that archetypes are a wonderful, wonderful thing. And I'm really happy to be able to distinguish and understand those, because sometimes I might be really good at one archetype, like the innocent adventurer is an archetype I'm really good at, and the creative nurturer. But, you know, maybe the oracle, which is more the mysterious one that is magnetic and able to receive. Well, for ages, I didn't even understand that archetype. I didn't even understand what the virgin birth was. So understanding that and having distinction around that actually enriched my life. Just like me understanding, you know, in Indonesia, the Hanuman as an archetype, which is, you know, the Monkey King, having a deeper understanding of that archetype and how that culture processes and expresses that archetype has enriched my life in so many ways. So yeah, so I think difference, when we see it as a way of enriching and understanding and gaining deeper distinctions, is actually incredibly beautiful and powerful. Yeah, but without prejudice. Answer. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that answer. And now that you've described for us all, you know, what archetype actually means, it is that focus, like Tim said, celebrating the strengths. So that is that focus on the best of the two. And there wouldn't be a dance, you know, how could there be a dance if we couldn't distinguish? So absolutely love the
inside the shadow is the wisdom too. So, you know, it's not that we just never want to see the shadow. Inside the darkness, you know, I know for myself, I used to, when I was a lot younger, I used to suffer from depression a lot. But my deep understanding and delving into my own depression really gave me a lot of compassion and understanding for other people. So I think the shadow is really important. When I look out in the world and see some very sociopathic leaders at the moment, you know, like in Brazil and other places. I don't want to get too political here, but you know, it's pretty obvious. But I also see, well, you know, that teenage egoic aspect. You know, what do I need to understand about that? One, to protect myself from it, but two, to understand what leads to that, so that when I'm interacting with young people, whether it's male or female, and I see that sociopathic tendency, what can I do to assist a different pathway?
I love that. That's so good, because it's always bringing it back into balance so that we can be free and be consciously choosing how we want to move forward. So
that's right. And also avoiding too. Sometimes you just have to avoid certain people. Yeah. So, you know, there's good in avoidance at times as well. I'll walk across the other side of the road, you know.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a beautiful full circle right back to the whole, you know, way of looking at this pandemic right now, with Mother Earth sending us to the bedroom to kind of like work out where we want to go from here, what's sustainable, what's healthy for us. And I just want to really acknowledge you, Pip, for the beautiful work that you do. But not only that, just everything that you do, I see, comes with such authenticity, and you bring such a beautiful positive energy to everything that you share. But it's not from the place of discounting the challenge or the negative side of it. It's coming from an empowered, like, I'm accepting of this and I'm facing it with courage and confidence. And it's such a beautiful, you're such an inspiring leader to me.
Thank you so much, Vanessa. I really appreciate that. And I think the last thing I want to remind people of is, of course, the wheel of fortune will turn. We will definitely come back up. And after the Spanish flu was the roaring 20s, you know, after World War II was the 50s, you know, there will be a tremendous upsurgence after everything settles down. But we do need to reach out, you know, to countries and people who are suffering. And, you know, if we're in a better position, you know, it is important to recognize that and to be supportive, whilst at the same time looking after ourselves. And it's okay to be happy when you're happy, even when other people aren't. That's also okay. Yeah. And Vanessa, thank you so much. I've just loved this, and I just love everything that you do. It's so beautiful and special. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're so welcome. Well, it's like I said at the beginning, I'm being a little selfish with these interviews because I've taken pages and pages of notes, as I do, you know, with being able to dive into your wisdom. So just want to thank you again for your time, for your energy, for your wisdom, and the beauty that radiates from your soul with everything that you share. It's just always a delight, and I hope to connect again soon. And I'll have this interview out across Facebook. It's going to be on YouTube. It'll go out on the podcast. So lots more people will be watching the recording and getting a ton of value from all that you've shared today. And I can see a lot of people saying thanks. So thanks again, Pip.
My absolute pleasure, Vanessa. See you. Lots of love.
Bye.
Bye.